Squeezebox Podcast.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Tom.
I'm Shane.
His name comes first in the name of the show. He's more important. He is shameless. He tells really scary stories about his life that
And I'm
I
the
would
funny
never
one.
tell.
Yeah. And Tom, I let him talk first just because he's not so funny and it just makes him seem a little more important.
So we do a weekly show from one of the only cities that is actually south of the United States, but in Canada.
Windsor, Ontario.
And we just do a lot of this. A lot of tangents, a lot of stories.
A lot of bantering. We tell a lot of embarrassing stories about our life. We do our shows typically on Sundays in my basement.
I think that's where every podcast studio
that's
is
not code.
in North America.
Yeah. It's on the 40th floor of an apartment building. It's not. That's where the antenna is. We're in the basement.
Listen to us. Tell your friends. Squeezebox Podcast with Shane and Tom.
And we typically post our show every Wednesday.
Tune in.
See you later.
Welcome, residents, to the Dr. DC podcast. My name is producer Richard, and across from me is the doctor himself.
Hello.
Each week, we talk about the weird and wonderful world of DC while fielding questions from listeners like you. Today, we are joined by a very special guest, Matthew. Is it Poulter?
Poulter.
Poulter? Like poltergeist?
Like poultry.
Poultergeist?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that one my entire life.
Matt, which do you prefer, poltergeist or poultry?
Fun fact, I recently found out through a friend that like a poulter actually was like a butcher specifically for poultry. That's where it comes from.
Oh, shit. Really?
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Oh, well, hot damn.
Regardless, it has nothing to do with his last name. It's all about calling him the film expert.
Yes.
Right? That's what he really...
Oh, right.
It's film expert Matthew Poulter.
So that's why you said poltergeist. Yeah, that's smarter than what I did.
Yes. No, exactly.
All right. Yeah. Well, I mean, Matt and I know each other from the way back, but yeah, I mean, I'll flip it over and let him talk about himself a little bit. But he is, in my humble opinion, a film expert.
From one expert to another.
No, you do. You've got like film credentials. Do you know?
Wait, what?
Yeah, I dare say it. It shocks me myself, but like, yeah, I suppose so.
Yeah. So why don't you tell all the listeners at home sort of a bit of a background on you and your sort of relationship to film then?
All right. Well, hi everybody. So basically my education is in film. So I did both my bachelor's and my master's in film studies at Carleton University, which for those who are not aware, it's actually the oldest film studies program in Canada, which I was not aware of until we actually started there.
Oh, sweet.
Ooh,
Yeah.
tut.
So I don't know. I guess that counts for something, I suppose. But yeah, so I that's my background with that. My specialty specifically has been with Japanese cinema, so specifically like animation and all that sort of stuff. That's kind of what I did my graduate thesis on.
Ooh, like Miyazaki kind of stuff?
Yeah, like my graduate thesis was on Mamoru Oshii, who is specifically the guy who directed Ghost in the Shell.
Oh,
so,
hell yeah. Nice.
Yeah, so fun fact, I actually got to see him give a live talk at the Toronto Film Festival like while I was writing this, so that was pretty sweet.
Oh, damn.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay, well, I have to ask the obvious question. You know, you're on a comic book podcast,
Say
and
what?
you just said that you were basically like an anime expert. Have you seen Batman Ninja?
Oh, I thought your question was going to be, how many women have you actually slept with?
It was not the question I thought you were going to ask. I thought I was about to get like, why the hell are you here?
Right, yeah.
But yes, I have seen Batman Ninja. I bought that shit the day it came out on Blu-ray.
Did you think it was as awesome and as fucking insane as we did?
Oh yeah. Like I went into it just expecting it to be like just a Japanese take on Batman, and I was like, oh no, this is basically every anime combined into one. It's starring Batman.
It does feel like it like jams all of the anime tropes in there, like
and then some.
Yeah, like almost like it knew that it was going to be watched by an American audience, so they were like, let's just give them everything they think they know about anime.
I still can't wrap my head around the moment when they like changed the animation style halfway through with the Joker. Like
Oh my god!
What was your mindset about that? I would love to know.
Oh, that was like, I mean, like just the shift to the watercolor perspective and everything. Like I was freaking out when I first saw that. Like that was just beautiful.
It really was.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous film. So beyond just being a film expert, and Matt and I have talked about movies lots. Matt is also like a comic book geek a little bit. So like Matt,
on this podcast, what?
Well, you know,
Yeah.
I can't just keep bringing like family members and stuff like that onto the show. Why don't you? Can you tell us a little bit about like how you got into comics, or sort of like basically, yeah, maybe like what got you into comics, and now like what are you reading? How did you get from?
Sure. Yeah, sure. No, that makes a lot of sense actually. So, like basically as long as I could remember, I've been a fan of Batman. Was kind of the big one for me. So like,
Of course.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, like there's pictures of me at age like 3 or 4 dressed up as Batman for Halloween.
Sure.
As we all did. Yeah.
Well, I was Phantom of the
Yeah, of
Opera.
course.
But
You fucking dork. Oh my god.
That
You went into theater, really?
yeah,
That explains so much.
yeah, probably.
But yeah, so no, like my first instance of like really getting invested in like a comic book universe and stuff was the Batman animated series from the 90s, because you know who doesn't love that show.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but then I was a little bit of a neophyte to comics for like a little while, in the sense that, you know, I was one of the many people who was like, I find them fascinating and I like the characters of the universes and stuff, but like where in God's name do I start?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it can be hard to like find an entry point, especially when we were kids, because they were in the middle of either like killing or crippling all of the heroes.
Oh yeah. So yeah, like, no, between taking some courses that actually detail a lot about like sort of the writing of comics and the study of them, and like even comic book films and whatnot, and then to boot, like just having a very good friend throughout the latter half of my bachelor's and into my master's who like worked at a comic book store.
Right.
Like that really helped a lot for kind of getting caught up and getting reinterested in things.
So it really wasn't until like later then that you were actually like reading comic books. Like, yeah, that wasn't a thing you did as a kid then, eh?
Well, like a yes and no, in the sense like I had The Odd Couple like as a kid, but it wasn't like, honestly, the main comic I read through the majority of my time as a child was the Archie Comics Sonic the Hedgehog comic.
Holy shit.
Like, yeah, because for those who doubt my nerd credentials, I'm also huge into video games. And
You've caught my attention.
Yeah.
And like specifically when I was a kid, like Sonic was my favorite. So when I found out there was a comic series of that, like I believe I have like at least like well over half of the issues that were printed of that in its entire run, but I'm not 100% sure.
Wow. So then if we flip ahead to like now, what are the types of things that you're reading? I mean, I know from the stuff that you and I have done together, and Matt was very generous when I used to have my like.
So
DC
he was
Comics.
very generous when you guys would do things together? Is
Yeah.
that what,
When I used to have my DC Comics blog, Matt would write like reviews of movies and stuff.
He was voluntold?
Yeah, pretty much. I roped him in. So we've talked about comic book movies a lot, but in terms of what you're reading, do you read lots of superhero comics, or is it more of like the independent publisher kind of stuff?
So I've actually been getting huge into some of the newer superhero comics over the last little while. I will say I'm a horrible comics fan in that I don't have like a monthly pull list or anything. I usually wait for the trades to come out.
Heathen.
But yeah. I'm well aware of what that paints me as, and like I don't know, guys, I can't do much better than that. But no, in terms of like superhero comics these days, like lately I've been catching up on a bunch of the DC Rebirth stuff, and there's been like a couple in particular that I've really zeroed in on and been enjoying.
Which ones are those?
So I've been catching up on Red Hood and the Outlaws.
That is a surprisingly good book. I've just started reading that one.
So, like, that was one that, like, so the story behind a lot of this is that, like, there's a really good used bookstore that I know of in my city that, like, I go there and they have a really wide selection of comics, and every once in a while they'll get something, like, fairly new, and I'll end up, like, in there consulting the internet on, like, should I buy this or not?
Right.
And that was one in particular that I was like, you know, I'd heard and seen all the stuff about like the New 52 one.
Yeah, that one's I wasn't super interested. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I looked it up and then like I forget where exactly I found this, but I just found like a list of people just going like, "Oh my god, the Rebirth one is so good," and nobody seems to know that. Yeah,
I just finished the first arc, that Dark Trinity arc, where Black Mask is the bad guy, and it puts Bizarro and Red Hood and Artemis together as a team. It's terrific. It's so good.
Yeah, I was like, I definitely like I skimmed through the first volume when I found it, and I was just like, wow, this is like as good as what I saw of the other one was bad. And
yes, yeah.
Like it blows my mind too, because it's like it's the same writer.
Oh shit! Yeah, I guess it is, eh?
Yeah, which to me just has me going like, okay, like did editorial mandate make this terrible, or what's exactly the problem here?
Right, yeah. Interesting. Is there anything else other than Red Hood and the Outlaws?
Deathstroke. Been reading a lot of Deathstroke.
Are you still like reading it? It's into that like Deathstroke versus Batman arc right now where they're calling Damian's parentage into question.
Man, I have not gotten that far yet, but I'm stoked about it now. Yeah.
Basically, the current arc is purporting that possibly Slade is Damian's father.
That would explain
a lot. So, normally when we do the show, we go through news and stuff. We skip that. We talked about comics a little bit. We talked about your nerd credentials. We talked about what you're reading right now. But we got a ton of questions.
Yeah, we did.
About our theme for this week, which is
the Nolanverse,
which I thought was a perfect one for you because I know that you love those movies.
Yeah.
And so we got a bunch of questions about the Nolanverse. I'm hoping that we can like really like dig in and talk about it. But before we get to the questions, if you had to make like your opening statement about what you thought of the Nolanverse, what would it be?
Address the court, please.
Oh man, it's one of those things that it's like it's so impossible to just distance those movies from like just the impact that they had at the time that they came out.
Right.
Like I don't know, they're like to me. There's as much as The Dark Knight always gets the credit for being like the biggest entry in that whole thing. Like I still cannot overemphasize like just how much of a change it was. Like seeing Batman Begins, like several years after the previous movie we'd gotten was Batman and Robin.
Well, exactly. Actually, because of Batman and Robin, I actually didn't see Batman Begins when it came out. I didn't see Batman Begins until after The Dark Knight.
As a DC aficionado as yourself, I'm very surprised.
Because I didn't realize until The Dark Knight came out that it was the sequel to Batman Begins. Like I thought Batman Begins was just more of the shitty one.
Oh.
I thought it was a prequel to the shitty ones. And so I didn't see Batman Begins until after The Dark Knight, and then I was like, oh shit, no, this is good.
Man, like the Dark Knight, I was just thinking about it. I'm like, I think that's actually the first movie I bought on Blu-ray.
That one, I mean, you were talking about the impact. I remember that movie coming out. I remember the anticipation for it. I remember that, like the whole like the Why So Serious marketing campaign. I remember like deconstructing the movie, like being super nitpicky, pulling it apart, and just thinking it was perfect. And
and just like man, the crowds. Like, I remember just that's the last time I can really remember like going to the movie theater and just like trying to get a ticket, but seeing like people lined up around the building to see this thing.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if maybe like just the cinema landscape is different now, because like, even movies that I know sold more or whatever, like Infinity War or something like that, like I didn't have a hard time getting in, right? But the Dark Knight was one of those things where it's like, holy shit, when are we going to see this? You had to like,
yeah, it took me weeks to even be able to like get a ticket to a screening. I remember that, like, it's just, it was so huge.
Yeah, it was a massive movie. I remember that sort of, it like dominated the conversation for months, and then obviously continued to with the passing of Heath Ledger. But it just sort of like it took over that movie. Yeah, it definitely stands out as one that had like a huge impact. But it's also like one of those things, you know, people talk about like concerts they went to. I don't want to say Woodstock, but you know, like they talk about like the experience around the event, and I definitely feel that
I dropped acid and then went to see The Dark Knight 5 times.
Yeah, turns out I was just in a field for 4 days. I never saw it once. What about you, Richard? Do you like remember The Dark Knight coming out, or was that like not a thing you cared about, or was it just not that important?
Oh, it was super important for me. I mean, I went and saw Batman Begins in the theater and was blown away. I mean, I think I had the same experience that you all did, which was, I mean, seeing those other Batman movies, you were basically just like, wow, the 80s had some cool Batman movies. I wish that would happen again. Because after that, I mean, it was a lot of cool toys. Which like the best toys. Like I had the light up Batman, like Batmobile. Yeah, like
the one from the end of Batman and Robin on the ice.
With the blue lights and stuff. Like, they had it was meant to produce toys, and that's what it did.
It's like a merch machine.
Absolutely. Yeah. So from that perspective, it was great. I mean, as a dumb child, it was nice, but like, even just coming slightly out of that childhood, I immediately was just like, oh no, those were terrible movies. Yeah. And then it was just like, well, I guess, I mean, it's a superhero movie. How could that ever be good? And so that my mindset just kind of washed it away. So when I started hearing when I saw the trailer for Batman Begins, I thought to myself, I'm like, this is what, like, the possibilities are finally here that you can have a movie of this caliber, and it's a superhero movie.
Yeah.
Well, and especially too the fact that, like, I mean, the advertising for it, if I remember correctly, like, didn't give away a ton of what it was specifically about, other than like that it was kind of an origin thing, and like they had like the mild hints that Scarecrow was in it, who, like, I'm gonna say for the record, like, Scarecrow, like, to this day is my favorite Batman villain.
Whoa!
And, like, I have seen you dressed up as Scarecrow for Halloween.
Wow. Yes, you have. As a matter of fact.
Well, that was actually the one year that it was his Wizard of Oz outfit, but it's fine. It's fine.
Okay,
easy mistake.
Man, that would be a hell of a crossover.
It would be funny to see, like,
imagine that?
It would be funny to see a group of people at like a con, but dressed as like Batman's Scarecrow and like Metallo and Cheetah,
man,
and like do like a weird Wizard of Oz.
So did we all just decide that we're going to go to Comic-Con together?
I think that just happened. Yeah.
Crazy story. I've been to Comic-Con, like San Diego Comic-Con.
Oh. What a bummer.
Well, I think we're done here.
Yeah, we can close up shop now. We do have some California...
Lest anyone question why I'm here.
Yeah. We do have some California listeners, so if any of you have means of getting us onto Comic-Con in San Diego, I mean, why didn't you do it already?
Yeah, if you want to pay our room and board, pay our ticket, fly us down. Please do it.
I can attest that the doctor will do some questionable things for those tickets.
No comment.
He started doing them to me, just assuming that I would somehow get it to happen. So,
wait, you mean it's not going to
happen? But yeah, like, I mean, so after seeing the first movie, obviously my expectations were insanely high. I never expected The Dark Knight to be what it was.
To me, they and I think this is probably commonly said, but those Batman Begins and The Dark Knight are almost two different genres of movie. The Dark Knight,
without a doubt.
The Dark Knight is so naturalistic. Batman Begins is just like a not silly Batman movie.
Yeah,
you know, there's like the supernatural elements in it.
It's still, like, I think the concept,
the sci-fi elements. Yeah, in it. But The Dark Knight is basically like a mob movie with Batman.
Yeah, without a doubt. Like, I mean, it's the kind of thing that, like, it's the first time I remember being cognitive about how, like, an adaptation can like not specifically model itself entirely on the thing that it's adapting, but still be true to it.
Yeah.
With superheroes too, I think that mindset had never even come into play at that point. Like,
oh yeah,
I mean, the idea of being that realistic.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like, I think the hottest ticket at the time in terms of superhero movies around the time that came out was like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies.
Ooh, yeah, you can't really get much like more different than like Spider-Man 2 and The Dark Knight, right? Like they're kind of on opposite ends of what was happening.
Yeah, but then I mean they made Spider-Man 3 and you really got to see the darkness. So
hey, dig on this.
Yeah, it's right. Fuck you, Marvel. It's a DC podcast.
Oh man.
But I mean, yeah, I don't think anybody ever expected The Dark Knight to be what it was. I think that I mean, there's a reason why it stands above it so much, so that it actually makes the first movie look bad, which I don't know how often that happens.
Well, and that's kind of true. Now, the elephant in the room here is that none of us have bothered to bring up Rises.
I was just thinking that.
I mean,
to me, the problem with Rises is that it tonally matches The Dark Knight, but the story bends more to where Batman Begins was. Like, it wanted to bend back into the more comic booky stuff.
Yeah.
Like a guy who's super strong and, we're going to cut the city off from the rest of the No Man's Land thing, and like all that kind of shit doesn't work that naturalistically, because what's the number one complaint about Dark Knight Rises? It's like, how does he get back? He doesn't have any money. Why did he waste all that time painting a kerosene bat on the bridge? Like it's like they're picking apart the naturalism, right? Like it doesn't fit.
Well, because they set a precedent in the previous movie.
But Batman Begins, like he activates that thing and all the bats swarm in, and no one's like, oh, like where did all the bats come from? Like,
well, so I think that like he got the first movie and they were like, okay, like you still have to make it a superhero movie. Yeah. And so I think he had some restrictions after being we'll get into it, definitely being so devastated after the second movie because of obviously the tragedy.
Yeah.
I think that, betwixt that and the fact that he was probably like, Christopher Nolan was probably reading a lot of comics, trying to find some inspiration. And once you start once you start doing that, you start getting into that sort of comic book mindset and being, oh, wouldn't this be cool? Wouldn't that be cool? And so I think that kind of bled its way into it. Also, he didn't even plan on doing Dark Knight Rises after that, so he was convinced to do it. Yeah. So I think that like all of that playing together, I think that's how you end up with a more comic book version of it.
And the fact too that like they had every intention of potentially bringing Heath Ledger back as the Joker, like given the fact that he survives the end of Dark Knight, and like that was even listed as like a possibility, and
and trust me, that's part of the questions here. Don't worry, we have good listeners here.
I will get too ahead of myself.
You know what? Let's get into the to the questions because I think we're already starting to touch on a lot of this stuff. So we'll head over to Facebook.
Go to the Facebook. Go to the Facebook.
If he's not a listener, it's going to be real confused about how terrible that was.
He's
no, I've listened. Trust me.
I apologize then.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry you had to listen to that. Let's go. Okay, we got a question from Michael O'Brien. So he's got a couple questions in here. So let's just start with the first one, which is he needs everybody on the show to rank the 3 movies. I mean, it's pretty easy, but I'd be curious.
I mean, I'll go first. Mine's Dark Knight Begins and then Rises.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, like, after I saw Rises, I was like a staunch defender of that movie when like everyone was shitting on it. Like at the time, my ranking definitely would have been like Dark Knight Rises and then Begins.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And it's the kind of thing too that like I find when you go back and look at Begins, like there are some things about it that maybe haven't necessarily aged as gracefully as others, but like when I rewatched all 3 in preparation for this, and I was kind of like, oh boy, if I thought Begins aged, Rises, it's aged. So all that to say is, my ranking is the same.
I was kind of with
Dark Knight Begins, Rises.
I was kind of with you on Rises. When I saw it, I was like, it's the best. Yeah. It's perfect. It's a perfect movie. Christopher Nolan could do no wrong. And then every time I saw it after that, I was like, oh, but wait a minute. Like we'd like see something else. Like the facade would crack. What about you, Richard?
So obviously, The Dark Knight's number 1. I can't imagine a world where anybody doesn't.
Yeah, big upset there.
Yeah. I am going to say that Rises is my second.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, it's riddled with issues.
So what puts it above Begins for you?
For me, it's the set pieces.
Right.
it's so the scale of everything is so big.
Sure.
And for me,
Yes.
it's such a good, like, exciting movie. You get JGL, which, I mean, we'll get into that, but I mean, obsessed with him in that. I think, God, I wish that had continued.
And
but
speaking of set pieces, it opens with the best opening of the trilogy.
one of the best openings of a movie I've seen.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's like it competes with, like, from an action point, like, competes with Mission Impossible movies. Like, it's such a great way to start it, and like some of the most quotable lines of any of the movies came from Rises. I mean, probably the most quotable lines all come from Rises.
Yeah.
Some of it for comical reasons, but
The fire rises.
Well, like, man, it's, you know what? It's the kind of thing that, like, to this day, when, like, people talk about that movie and stuff, I'm always just like, you know what? I don't care who disagrees or whatever. I fucking love Bane.
It's I love Bane too, and that's another thing, is it's one of the closest to the comic books from, like, pieces of it.
Well, because he's not just like a mindless goon.
But I mean, you get the, like, breaking Batman's back, like, you get these pieces that actually, like, happened. Like, it's more of a comic book film than Dark Knight Rises is, right? Like, of the Dark Knight is.
Sure.
It's more of a comic book movie, I think.
Yeah.
So for me, like, as good as Begins is, and as important as it is, I have to put Rises second. I think
This is a slight tangent, but I'm thinking about that opening set piece with the plane, partly because it's amazing, but also because 2 nights ago I watched License to Kill with Timothy Dalton, and in the opening action sequence of that movie, he is lowered out of a helicopter, wraps a cable around the tail of, like, a prop plane, and then they lift it up, and that's how they catch Fran Sanchez at the beginning of that movie. And I was like, oh shit,
man.
did The Dark Knight Rises take this from License to Kill?
oh, that's a lot of pussy there. Brother.
You could say it was a galore of it.
An octopussy, if you will, brother.
Oh, we went to 2 very different pussy places,
Yeah.
but both have Bond references.
Yeah, that's I was going for both.
Great franchise, very progressive.
Can we like get a Bane Bond crossover now? Like, is that a thing we can call someone up and make happen, for God's sake? Because, like, we need that.
I kind of feel like that's almost where like Skyfall went. That he was
A little bit, yeah.
he was almost like Bane-esque, like, oh no, I wanted to be caught.
That was almost like an Indian accent.
He had a mouth-based physical deformity. He like
It's crazy you say that. It's crazy you say that because, like, I always hear people compare, like, that Javier Bardem role to, like, the Joker from Dark Knight. That's what I always heard.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Yeah,
Interesting.
I loved that. Like, I mean, that's probably my favorite. I mean, it's not the 007 podcast, but
yeah. All right. Let's go on to the next question. We've given our rankings.
Well, yeah. So now this is the second part of the question. So he goes on to say, also, do you think a Joseph Gordon-Levitt film would have worked? I thought, given a slightly hollow role, he did a good job and could pull off a Dick Grayson-like Batman film.
So we know he's not technically Dick Grayson, but Matt, like,
how hard did you get at the ending of that when he gets into the cave?
Oh yeah. And I mean, like, I
fucking diamond.
Well, like, I recently read Black Mirror and, like, a bunch of the Dick Grayson, like, as Batman stuff from Scott Snyder, and like that, like, it just fits it to a T.
So now, I mean, I know that it was never the plan, but would you say you were disappointed that it was only in there, like, narratively to set up that the story continues, and that it wasn't actually going to continue as a franchise?
You know what it is? I heard a lot of, like, I have a feeling the studio was really struggling with that quite a bit too, at least based on what I heard at the time. And, like, it's the kind of thing that, like, I was disappointed maybe that it didn't continue because, like, you know, like, that was around the time Joseph Gordon-Levitt was coming back in, like, a really huge way.
Yeah, totally.
Like,
absolutely.
Yeah, like Inception, I think, really sealed that and all that sort of thing. And now he's, like, everywhere again, rightfully so. And, like, I heard a lot of rumors, which might be totally unsubstantiated, but maybe not. But, like, I heard that, like, one of the plans they possibly had for, like, him continuing the franchise was to, like, do a future jump and kind of make it like Batman Beyond.
Oh, fuck. That would be weird in that Nolanverse to jump to sci-fi like that. That would be
Though I think like that was kind of
so like a Blade Runner like type world. Oh
yeah,
fuck.
Well, yeah, and like I think
here I go. I'm hard again.
Like I think that was maybe the idea of like that would be a way they could continue on that universe without necessarily having to have Nolan involved with it, and like even like necessarily having to adhere to his movies so much.
right. Yeah, I mean,
like I think it could have been cool. Like it could have been cool to see what would have happened.
yeah, I mean, it does feel. I mean, you got to give Christopher Nolan credit that he told the story he told, and then that was it. But it does feel a little bit like too much of a. It's not just like
no, that was setting up another movie.
Yeah, it was like he finds the cave, swings in. They call him
didn't-
Robin. Like
that did not need to be in that movie, but like
it did feel like too much of a tease to then not have become something. Even if the thing that it became was shitty or whatever, it feels like it should have happened.
It was a high school dance for me all over again. All that set up and no payoff. I mean,
Oh Jesus!
We've all been there.
yeah, exactly. I for me, like, and you also have. I'm assuming. I mean, I can guarantee they were already planning to do Justice League at that point.
Well,
They were planning at least Batman v Superman.
No, they weren't. They were
Really?
planning Man of
No,
Steel.
they weren't actually.
They were only planning Man of Steel.
Why did that come out before I Am Legend?
Oh no! That I Am Legend.
Oh, come
reference has
on.
nothing to do with.
Really?
Yeah.
So it was just like coincidental that it was.
I think
they joked about it.
There
and then
had been a floated pitch for a Batman and Superman like fight movie,
okay.
but it didn't even make it to like they weren't even getting scripts or whatever. Like nothing happened with it.
So they weren't. I mean, they weren't planning on Justice League.
They weren't
at that point?
They weren't even planning a DCEU until they tried it with Green Lantern
because they were.
That was 2011.
Yeah,
and then that didn't go anywhere. They were like, oh fuck. And then Man of Steel was going to happen. They just let that movie happen. That's why there's such a big gap between that and Batman v Superman. It's because they didn't do any work on it until Man of Steel came out, and then they were like, oh no, like this movie went well. Like people liked it. It sold well.
Actually, financially, it didn't do well at all. That was the crazy part. At least not in the domestic box office.
I think it's still like it's one of the stronger ones, though, isn't it? It's still like did like 700 million or something, and it had a smaller budget than some of the other ones.
Yeah, worldwide, but like domestically, like I definitely remember at the time, like Warner Brothers was not happy with it.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that.
But I don't think they were planning a Justice League at that time.
Because, I mean, that would have played so perfectly had they, like...
The previous Justice League movie that they had been playing with was George Miller's Justice League Mortal, and that was like 2006. That was before The Dark Knight came out.
Yeah.
It's such a bummer. I just wish that they had done something with it. Like, even if they had done something like even if they were like, okay, we don't have Batman, but we could still do like the Red Hood, or like you could do something like.
Oh, you wish that it had continued like as a continuity.
Yeah,
like we get to the end of Dark Knight Rises, and then moving on, if the Justice League forms, it's still in like the same.
Yeah, like I get why they technically couldn't have done it, because like how do you continue a character like that, but without the director into it? It's a weird move for sure, because he had such a staple of.
Well, I mean, Nolan produced Man of Steel. You could see
that's true.
You could see his influence.
Yeah,
but
and I mean, like it's not impossible to necessarily
just not his writing or his directing.
At least some of the characters into like a sort of pseudo-realistic universe, in the sense that it's kind of hard to reconcile. Like it would be tough to bring Green Lantern, I think, into the continuity of something like the Nolanverse Batman movies, but like. I don't know, in terms of antagonists and stuff, like I said, maybe this is because I'm reading the comics, but like throw Deathstroke in there, throw in like Deadshot or anything. Like there's plenty of room. There was plenty of room to expand upon it, even if like they were potentially maybe tied down by the realism aspect.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Christopher Nolan got his hands on Green Lantern, then you'd get his trademark like lack of imagination in an imagination. Like I'm thinking of Inception.
Yeah.
Like it's a movie about dreams where there's like it's the most boring fucking dream. I know it's the point of the movie, but that you're trying to pass it off like it's real life. But those are boring fucking dreams.
Oh man, like it's funny you bring
there are
this
no
up
robots. There, no one's getting like beach blow jays or anything. It's just fucking bank heists.
That librarian from my college didn't show up in it. halfway through. But then it was also a butterfly, but like not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was kind of in your house.
Yeah, but it wasn't my
I didn't
house.
have to build a fence with my ex-landlord or anything like that. Like,
Yeah.
Seriously, that librarian was so
I feel
hot.
like a
Oh my
Nolan.
God.
It's funny you bring that. It's funny you bring that up actually, because like my girlfriend has like not necessarily caught a ton of the bigger movies as they've come out, so she like just watched Inception for the first time.
Yeah.
Like maybe a few weeks ago, and she did not care for it.
My wife has seen almost the entirety except for the last half an hour of Inception.
Oh, you don't need that bit.
Which is not the important part.
Yeah, not at all.
No.
God, she doesn't even know that he started spinning the top, let alone which way it.
Oh man.
Oh my God.
All right. Should we?
Yeah, let's
get
move on to the
another
next question.
Yeah.
So we're now heading over to Twitter.
Twitter.
Are you okay? From our
You need medical assistance.
yes, but regardless of the podcast.
We'll plow through.
Blink twice if you think you're in danger.
Yeah, that's good for an audio medium.
All right, so we're going to our old friend from Puff Cheek Pastries.
All right.
They ask, do you believe that the Nolanverse showed that the quality of the world must be as important as any part of a story? Almost as if the setting and tone are important to the important characters that help the overall story. As Del Toro once said, it's not about eye candy, it's about protein.
Eye protein, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that feels like a bit of a leading question because it's hard to say like, no, the setting's not important. But
I don't know, guys. Like the city of New York was really like another character in Sex of the City.
what is that from? I know that bit. What is that from?
It's a lot of things. I think I can't remember.
Yeah. Matt, as someone who has like actually like studied film, maybe like understands the art of film better than
Us going, that's cool.
than we do as just like consumers of film. What's your perspective on what like the Nolanverse sort of brought to superhero movies?
Well, and I mean, like, I think that setting is the kind of thing that's always been super important to, like, especially Batman. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe this is just my longtime fandom showing, but to me, it's like when you're talking about
Cover
like,
yourself up, jeez.
Oh God! But it's like when you talk about where like the most iconic locations in superhero comics, like I guarantee if you ask like the average person, like what's like a major location from a comic book, people would say like Gotham City, Arkham Asylum, like stuff like that.
Sure,
because like it's not just so visually distinctive and always has been in like every adaptation of the story to date, but like it's also just the fact that like so much of it feeds into the characters that it depicts and that come from there,
right,
and all that sort of stuff. Like I don't know. To me, it's like I think of Metropolis and I think of it looking like any other city, like in the like any other major city in the United States, really.
Right.
Whereas, like, I think Gotham City, I think, like, darkness and clock towers and, like, you know...
gargoyles.
Just, like,
and...
Yeah, exactly, that sort of thing. And it's interesting, too, because, like, that was a segment of it that, like, the Tim Burton movies certainly got really right, in my opinion, like, from day one. And even, you know what, even the Joel Schumacher movies, for what they are, I will say that, like, I always found them at least kind of visually interesting.
They have
like,
those weird, like, Leviathan, kind of like Greek Adonis statues through the city. Like, is it Batman and Robin where he's, like, driving on the forearm of a
Oh, yeah.
How big is that fucking statue?
It's pretty rad.
Yeah.
It's like 100-story statue.
Oh my God.
Well, it's funny that you bring up the Burton one. I was thinking of this as you were talking. So the question is basically asking whether the Nolan Batman trilogy did something different in how like it made the characters and the world sort of fit together and really like flesh them all out sort of equally, both like the secondary characters and Batman himself. But as you were talking, I was thinking like maybe the Burton one did that too. Like, do you think that Nolan did something other than it just being a different style? Do you think that he did something different, or just that it was so shocking that it was so like realistic?
Well, and like that's one of the things that like I really would give Begins the nod for that one, because like that one, especially at the beginning, it spends like so much time just establishing like essentially at that point what a shithole Gotham City is in that particular universe. Like just like all the underbellies and the shipping yards and like just all the crime family stuff going on and stuff. Like, you know, the fact that Carmine Falcone is like one of the main characters that you meet right off the bat, and he's like pointing a gun at Bruce Wayne in a diner and is basically just being like, I could fucking kill you right now and no one here would lift a goddamn finger. I don't know. Like, to me, it really, like, it tried to emphasize much more the fact that like not that this is a fictional place from a comic book brought to life, but like I think it does a lot to kind of make it identifiable in that Nolan sense, where it's like, yeah, this is a fictional city, but they are dealing with issues and like, you know, very persistent problems that like a lot of places still kind of like deal with today, and I think visually it does a lot to bring that out. Even if like I don't know, it's Nolan's one of those filmmakers that it's kind of hard to like, you know, if you had to describe like what does a Christopher Nolan movie look like, it's like I think like muted color palettes and like dreams where you're not getting beach BJs and things like that. So
that's how they'll describe him, you know, when he gets his lifetime achievement Oscar.
I think it's about like taking the most interesting concepts possible and then how boring can you make it, and somewhere in the middle it's a great movie.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's a testament to his storytelling because there's not a lot to look at.
No, I think that, I mean, that's the reason is that you take these very fantastic things and then how do you like, without making them like these big sort of like explodey, like Michael Bay movies, he pulls away as much as he possibly can. Whatever's left is the good story. And I think that's probably it.
Well, and here's something kind of crazy. Like, a little ways back, I went to Chicago a few times, like over a few years.
Oh, you mean Gotham in real world?
Well, that's what I mean is like there was a time where I was walking around like a part of the city and like I found, I believe at least, I found the street where they film like the scene in The Dark Knight where the truck flips over and the Joker's in the middle of the street and stuff. Like and like it's crazy because like it's just a street. Like it's nothing super special about it. It's nothing super like identifiable about it. Just like the certain lights that they have on there and stuff. But like right away I could tell. Like right away, I was just like, "Whoa!" Like, okay, it looks like it does in the movie.
That's kind of
weird.
Yeah, it was just cool in that sense, and that like it did the visual design of those movies did such a great job of making you feel like Gotham is a place you could actually go to because in a way it is.
I wonder what side street in Chicago has the chalk outline of Thomas and Martha on it.
Oh my god. I did not find Crime Alley, though I didn't look that hard.
Yeah, I saw something called Crime Something. I figured I'd stay away from it. Yeah. Weird that they went down Crime Alley. You'd think that they would know better, but
yeah.
Well, fun fact: it used to be called Park Row. And then it was called Crime Alley after they were killed. They weren't like, let's go down Crime Alley to get to the car.
What could happen? No, they wanted to call it Crime Alley after because of all gentrification, I guess. Maybe if you call it that, the kids will think it's not cool. I don't want to do crime there. It's called Crime Alley.
What you do, you call it Crime Alley first. It plummets all of like the real estate value, and then eventually all of these like disenfranchised youth who can't find jobs move there because it's the only place they can afford, and then they start making coffee shops.
Oh, I see. Okay, because it's just like, oh, what are you doing, crime in Crime Alley?
Organic yogurt bars, and then they...
I like it. Okay, it's like a reverse concept. I like it. Yeah. That's awesome.
Well, and it's like you have to wonder, like, do they follow that naming convention with other parts of the city? Is there like Riff Raff Road and like...
Hooker Boulevard?
Oh my god.
That's really funny, actually.
I like.
There is the Diamond District in Gotham.
I mean, man. So I guess Riff Raff Road is the next one.
It's not. And there's Amusement Mile. That's where the theme park is. Gotham is kind of a place that just names things what they are. I think we answered that one.
Yeah. I like this when you don't have to talk. It's nice.
Well, fuck you.
We got from our old friend Dave Rossi.
Dave.
He asked...
Dave's not here, man.
Oh, how have we not ever done that?
Well, now it's the only thing that's going to happen.
Yeah, it's true. Now Dave's got a thing.
Finally, after all this time.
So Dave says the fun of these movies to me is that they're eternal. A Bruce Wayne that trains his entire life after making a vow to his murdered parents, not to murder his parents. That'd be weird.
Yeah, that's different.
Only to be sipping macchiatos after a few years' effort and turning the biz over to a cop is a reality I didn't enjoy as an ending. You?
Okay, well, I mean, these are interesting points. Is this something that has ever bothered you, Matt?
I mean,
yes, Matt. Tell me about.
It's just the kind of thing. It's God. It's just the kind of thing that like. How do I even describe this? Like,
can I revisit my rankings? I need to do this over again.
It's just, you can tell that the desire was so there to like wrap everything up in like a neat little package.
Like, no, you're not doing this after I'm done. This is the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, you know what? I've read a lot of people who have said that what they would have loved with Rises if they had just ended on that shot of like Alfred like looking up and grinning and like not shown anything past that.
Yeah, do the Inception or the Sopranos or the
where it just goes to black.
Yeah.
I definitely feel that way. My biggest complaint with Rises, beyond some of the little like plot contrivances like the kerosene bat and stuff like that, are that they establish that it's 8 years later. But then in the movie, they also established that he basically stops being Batman almost immediately after The Dark Knight. Like, all you have to do is just say, yeah, he was like Batman for like 5 more years, and then we haven't seen him for 3 years. 3 years is plenty of time without a Batman, if you had a Batman. And then it has more... I
feel like after a month, they would start getting worried.
You know what I mean?
Like,
but then,
honestly.
Then you could...
It's weird, all the crime's gone. But you it's like also, Batman's not here.
You could also more easily explain why his like body's in such like shitty shape. Like, he was Batman for 19 months, and he's like falling apart at the seams. Like...
Yeah.
And he had 8 years to fucking rest. Like,
yeah.
Why is he so shitty? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there was some weird... I don't fully understand why they went that way. Because The Dark Knight ends with, like, you know, I'll be hunted. But then he just gives up. Like, no. You're supposed to keep being Batman even though Gordon has to hunt you. Like, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
That's the good story.
Like, that's... Yeah. Well, I mean, like, and that story's been done too. Like, Mask of the Phantasm, which, like, what many would argue is the greatest Batman movie of all time.
Yep.
Like, has literally a scene that's just him getting chased by the cops, and like, it's really tense and awesome.
Yeah. And there's that other episode of the animated series too, where the Scarecrow induces like a vision of where Batgirl gets killed, and then Gordon turns on Batman or whatever.
It's actually not Scarecrow that does that.
Isn't it?
Barbara is standing outside Gordon's door and like imagining all this
sorry.
happening.
But Scarecrow is the one that like knocks her off the building in that vision.
Yes.
Right. Yeah,
he is. Yeah, but no, like that's like, and that episode actually kind of leads me to something I want to address with Rises, but like it's not super an answer to this question, so maybe we can save that for a second.
Sure. Okay. So, but back to this, like, does it ruin something about Batman that he basically was Batman for 19 months, did save the day again 8 years later, but then like just retires? And is happy? Like, does that ruin Batman? Is that a really cynical like perspective?
Well, and again, it's so interesting in the fact that, like, you know, again, like I'm throwing it back to Mask of the Phantasm. Like, that is just, and even some of the Burton movies, I would argue, is just like a pretty good argument in the direction of like Batman can't end up happy,
right?
Like there ain't no happiness at the end of that journey, sort of thing. Like,
yeah.
And it's, I don't know, like, I feel like this is almost kind of a litmus test for like how cynical are you as a person?
Yeah. I mean, to me, I think I agree with Dave that like, and I mean, the Nolan Batman movies do go this route about talking about like being more than a man, being a symbol. That's something that can't be broken or killed or whatever. So to me, it feels weird that he is both not killed and not Batman at the end of it. You know, like you have Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character in there. You could have him. Everything else remains the same, but Batman just doesn't make it out of that explosion. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like nothing else changes in that movie. And to me, that would it would resonate more. It would feel more correct.
Well, yeah, and it's like there's also that notion too that like I know the Arkham Knight game did this recently where like he kind of hangs it up, but the idea persists, and that's specifically because like everyone now knows who he is, like everyone knows his identity at this point,
Right.
Whereas like at the end of Rises, like most people still don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
Like that's not something that ever really gets revealed. He just it for the most part, aside from like Robin Blake and Gordon now, like everyone still has no idea Bruce Wayne was Batman.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Richard, is this a thing that ever like irked you or about those movies? That he basically just gets to chill in Italy. It's like Gotham's fine.
I'll say that like the first time I saw it, I thought it was pretty cool. Like I was just like, oh, nice. But I mean, like I liked it was a novel idea, and had in reflection, it's more upsetting because it's Batman, and that Batman wouldn't do that. Right. But like for as a story concept, yeah, it was great. I didn't need to see them, and that pissed me off that I saw them. But like from a story concept, I was like, oh, this is like I like the idea of it. Right.
You would have preferred if the movie
Catwoman coming back pissed me off a lot more.
Right. You would have preferred the ending that Matt was talking about, where it's just Michael Caine go, "I'll have a fun at Branca." Yeah, and then he just like looks up and
smiles.
You don't see what he sees.
Matt, it's perfect. It's like
I'm here on the banks of the Arno having my fun at Branca.
Yeah. Oh, what's that? Black. That's what I want. Like that would be perfect. Right. For me, what bothered me way more was Catwoman coming back. That long before that whole scene, like that, the fact that she came back bothered me.
Like you didn't feel like it fit?
It didn't fit her character at all.
As depicted in that movie, I would happen to agree with you actually. Like,
yeah. Yes, I know that they're married now, blah, 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 but like...
Well...
Okay, we no spoilers, okay? I'm not there yet. But yeah, that's... for me, it pissed me off long before that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think we're on side with you, Dave. I think none of us would too, like, vehemently disagree that it maybe felt like a little cheap or a little cop-outy, but...
You know what it is? It's a thing that I talk about a lot nowadays when I talk to people about like Star Wars and things like that, is that like it feels kind of silly. Like that's a word I just like throwing around for stuff like that, and that like, you know, you sometimes have to accept some of that because like comic books at their root are kind of silly in some way, shape, or form.
That's fair. I can't dispute that. Yeah.
But then I was like gonna say, but then it's interesting that like, for a franchise that distances itself from the silly just so much, like that ending moment in particular is like maximum cheeseball.
Yeah, that's true. I think the one thing we could all agree that Christopher Nolan does not do well is like genuine like pleasant emotions. Like I think he's good at he's good at tension, he's good at like the anger, he's good at like violence and suspense and things like that. I don't think he's good at like positive, genuine emotion. It's a thing that I don't like in Interstellar. It's basically non-existent. It doesn't exist in Inception. I don't think it happens well. Like nothing with Rachel Dawes works for me in those Batman movies. Like I think that's a real stumbling block for Christopher Nolan. Like he doesn't know how to do it.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like when I mentioned my girlfriend recently saw Inception and wasn't too keen on it, like I asked her like what in particular she wasn't crazy about, and she was like, I felt like it didn't have any heart, and I was like, I can't argue with that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, he's definitely kind of a brainy sort of writer director, but yeah, you're right. He's missing the heart.
Now we're heading over to Instagram.
And we're going to Instagram, take some photos and answer them.
You got it this time.
I've been listening. I've been trying to. I'm getting ready,
writing it down and like repeating it in the mirror,
saying it in the mirror. Yeah,
you could do this.
Yeah, Mom, spaghetti. He's nervous.
You know what I heard the other day? Apparently, that at Eminem's live shows, he actually has like a cart that serves Mom spaghetti.
What?
Apparently that's a real thing.
So sorry, you go to a rap show and you get served spaghetti?
Yeah, apparently that's like a legit thing.
Why the fuck haven't I been to an Eminem show?
Right? You would think like you'd get hard candy, but no. Spaghetti.
That's amazing.
That feels like something out of a Dave Chappelle sketch.
I know.
Yeah, it does,
I'm impressed that he's that like
It's
self-referential.
Prince with the waffles and Eminem with the spaghetti.
Exactly. I like
exactly. You want some grapes or something?
All right. Our first question comes from Kid Caballero.
Ooh.
It's not racist because he said it's okay. He asks, what villain would you like to have seen get the Nolanverse treatment? Penguin and Riddler seemed like obvious choices.
Okay. Well,
That's what he says.
I'll let Matt go last on this one. I want us to go in first here.
I was going to say, I think you and I have actually talked previously about my response to this one.
We definitely have.
Yeah,
You've also
you guys go ahead.
You've also alluded to it already this episode, but maybe you have a slightly different answer. But so he said Penguin and Riddler, both of which I would have loved to have seen, and because The Dark Knight was such a huge thing, that's where I really remember seeing people doing like fan edits and like casting and making posters for the next movie.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Riddler is always
before
really good.
people knew what the next movie was going to be called, everyone was like, it's going to be called the Cape Crusader. Like each movie's going to have a different name for Batman. He's like Batman Begins, Dark Knight, Cape Crusader. Like I remember seeing all these fan posters that were that, and it was like Neil Patrick Harris or something as Riddler, or it was like Philip Seymour Hoffman as the Penguin.
Oh god.
Or it was
Would you penguins fuck me?
I'm in the iceberg lounge. It's so fucking cold in here. Batman.
I want to get you, Batman. I'm going to get you and you're going to get me.
I'm going to show her my French flipper trick. Yeah, so both Penguin and Riddler I could see because I remember them being bandied about in those fan edits and stuff like that. And I remember thinking that the Penguin would work really well, not as the main villain, but as like a guy he's got to go to for information, like a step along the way you'd like throw in like a Maroni or something like that in The Dark Knight. But beyond those two, I think one that I'm backing myself into a corner because it probably doesn't work in the Nolanverse, but I did remember thinking that a version of Clayface that wasn't a straight up shapeshifter, but maybe someone who like could kind of like maybe like all the bones were broken in their face and they would like painfully kind of like shape themselves. This is also making me think of Hush. Hush would work really well.
Yes,
but some sort of grotesque Nolanized Clayface. I think those were ones that I really wanted to see. Maybe even Firefly, like a pyromaniac with a jetpack, basically. Like that. I think you could Nolanize that. I think Firefly would be interesting too. Yeah. What about you, Richard?
So I've got three. I because I couldn't just pick one, and the more I thought about it, I've got three. So for different reasons. One, Jeremiah Arkham.
Oh, okay,
yeah. There we go.
So say we got a fourth Batman movie.
Right.
And we've gone so big at this point. The only next step is, if it was a TV show, you got to do a bottle episode, right?
Yeah.
You got to bring it all back in. Where better to do that than Arkham Asylum, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like that would be such a great way to like bring it all closer. You still have like Jeremiah Arkham's a character that you can have be this sort of Nolan type villain, where it's not these big gigantic things. It's more of these small like acts of evil that he does that are much more interesting than you have obviously Arkham Asylum as like the thing that you play with. I feel like that would really, really, really work really well.
Right.
And it was pretty underused in those movies too. So like there's tons of room for expansion there.
Yeah, ton of it. I feel like that would be so awesome just to spend the entire thing inside of it, much like the Batman Arkham Asylum game.
Totally.
Yeah.
Which goddamn, that was good.
So who are your other two?
So my next one is James Gordon Jr.
Oh, totally.
Like at this point you've built
that kid gets held hostage by Two-Face. That messes him up.
Yeah.
It's
perfect.
Yeah.
Like already set up to like become this sort of killer. And you at this point you've built up James Gordon so high that you need to find a way to bring him down. And what a great way to do that than to like be like, your son's bad. That forces him to defend his son maybe
against Batman.
Yeah.
Like he's trying to protect his son.
Exactly.
Oh fuck. Oh shit. I like that a lot.
Right?
Yeah, okay. Who's your third?
Yeah.
Good luck topping that one, though. I really like James Gordon Jr. That's a great one.
Wouldn't that be... Oh, man. Like, seriously, for me, I think that, like... That would be such a cool concept. The last one.
I'm now pissed that didn't happen. That's how much I like that idea. That I'm like, shit, that's really good.
Yeah.
And so the last one for me is Zaz.
You're doubling down on like the really like rooted, realistic
With Nolan, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's for me like
when he's in Begins.
Oh, he is.
That's
right.
right.
That's right. Yeah.
So
Fuck, I forgot about that. Yeah.
this way you can and imagine a fourth one, just an R-rated like horror movie.
You're just making like 7 or something.
Well, because
pretty
the
much.
second movie was the mob movie, right?
Yeah.
The third movie was the heist.
Yeah.
That's
that's
right.
true,
And so this fourth one, make it a straight up like horror movie,
Right.
and like you legitimately have to like
interesting.
all of the like toys don't mean anything. He has to do detective work at that point,
Yeah.
which is the thing that he didn't really get a chance
That's also
to do.
the thing you liked in Batman Ninja.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get pull everything away, and now it's just man versus man,
Right.
intelligence, right, versus insanity. Like how does he really fight that?
Okay. Yeah.
Much smaller scale. I feel like.
Okay.
Who's yours, Matt?
Oh, so mine was Mr. Freeze.
No. Oh, really?
Like legit, yeah.
Oh shit! Sorry.
How do you think that would work? I think that would be.
So the thing about that is that like, okay, the science of the character that probably would have been like the craziest or the most ridiculous aspect of it. But like for anyone who's watched the animated series and other like aspects that bring him in, like his episodes were always some of the most memorable.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that like he was basically this Shakespearean like tragic figure who like he wasn't doing this because he was insane. He wasn't doing this because like he was an agent of chaos and he just wanted to sow chaos. Like he was a guy who just had like the rawest of deals and just was like, fine, like this world's shown me like just how shitty it is. I'm going to be equally bad. Yeah. And like, I don't know, like it's the kind of thing that like, again, I know they would never have considered doing it because I'm sure like in terms of live action depictions, like I'm sure Arnold Schwarzenegger has like ruined that character in people's minds forever.
Yeah, maybe. I did see a great like fan edit of Patrick Stewart as Victor Freeze, and I was like, "Oh fuck!"
Well, and the one that I was thinking of, and I remember thinking of this a couple of years ago. I remember going to see Star Trek Into Darkness and like seeing the scene that Benedict Cumberbatch reveals that he's Khan and going into his whole backstory. I was just watching this and like, this guy would be a killer Mr. Freeze.
Totally. He's even got the icy blue eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and just like he's got like he does the pathos really well, and like I don't know, it would have like you almost could have. I feel like following the Dark Knight Rises and stuff, like because they really tried to play off the notion of like public unrest and like a lot of like people just being generally like maybe not super down with the establishment and not super down with figures like Batman.
Right.
Like who better to bring in at that point than like a villain who like. You know, people hear his story and they'd probably be like, yo, like maybe this guy has a point.
Right.
Like,
yeah, no, that's really interesting. Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. So let's go to the next question then. This villain question.
All right. So yes, the second is what villain would you like to choose? What would hero?
Sorry, what hero? Oh, like if we left Gotham, but it was still in the Nolanverse.
Yeah.
I mean, my obvious answer is Green Arrow, but I'm going to try and avoid that because...
Then that's literally what it says is what hero would you like to have seen besides Green Arrow?
Oh, fuck. Okay.
Yeah.
Other than Green Arrow in the Nolanverse, I would be interested in like some sort of Nolan version of Suicide Squad.
Yeah,
I would like to see the Black Ops off the books, like worst of the worst team in the Nolan.
Which version of Suicide Squad would it be?
Like what kind of characters would be on it? So because it's the Nolanverse, I guess you can't have anything too outlandish, but you could definitely have Bronze Tiger. He's basically an assassin.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting if they tried to like break Joker out and like make him conform, and then he, that Heath Ledger Joker. That would have been interesting.
Yeah.
You could definitely have, a character like a Deadshot. That's a sniper. That's something that fits in that world. You could even have like a character that's maybe more of like a knife or a swordsman type, like a Black Manta or something like that, right?
Or like Lady Shiva or something like that. Which
Lady Shiva, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would have been interested in maybe like a Nolan Suicide Squad is maybe where I would have gone. Yeah.
Okay, what about you, Matt? Hero, what would you like?
Oh man, like I'm trying to think of which ones would even be possible, and it's like the one that immediately jumps to my mind, like in terms of like one that could like really fit in that universe, is Cyborg.
Oh,
fuck.
Like just in the sense that like, yeah, I could totally see like a Nolanverse taking on like this really like transhumanist like.
More of like a near future, like less like so much of a robot and more of like a I could see that.
Yeah, like it could be like again, this is my past interest showing, but like it could totally be like a Blade Runner almost like, or like a Ghost in the Shell-esque like take on like at what point are you still human even when this has gone on? Like it could almost be focused more on that than even really being a superhero movie, really.
That also works with Midnighter too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Oh yeah. That's a very good point, actually.
What about you, Richard?
So I've been thinking long and hard about this one. I'm very excited about this one. So Booster Gold.
Oh.
Yeah. So let me paint you the picture here.
So like a boring Nolan version of time travel?
Yeah, but who else could handle that, right? Like, so you basically have
a guy who thinks he's time traveled.
No. We'll make it actually time travel. So
sure.
I'm picturing like a primer kind of situation.
Okay.
So you have this like sort of athlete who's basically ruined his career, longing for the glory days. He has this friend who's a scientist.
Yeah.
And so he just keep coming to him, and the scientist had been working on time travel things like that, but had never really mastered it. One day Booster Gold comes in, and for whatever events end up happening, they end up jumping back in time.
Right.
Well, it happens very, very quickly, and they go back to the future. And so he's like, whoa, like he immediately starts seeing how this can improve his life, what he could do. I mean, he wants that sort of glory back.
Right.
His friend wants to try to do these experiments because he's excited, but he's also worried about it going too far. So he decides that together they'll start trying to work on this and trying to do time travel.
Right.
So at first they're just jumping randomly and they don't know where they're going to end up. And so you get like sort of like 1800s, like London. And then you get
this was actually so close to like a Booster Gold New 52 series pitch that never happened. But it was like Booster being, like time jumped through different eras. Yeah.
And so they eventually figure it out and they start getting towards when his career started failing, and he keeps trying to fix it, but then obviously through time travel insanity. And if you've seen the movie, have you seen the movie Primer?
Yeah.
So
of course
he basically like fucks his whole life up and decides that he's just going to go back and not go back to the future and
not come home.
And so it's like almost like a spinning the dial kind of situation, just like starts to randomize it. His friend figures out what he's doing and tries to stop him. They end up getting both sent back in time, destroys the machine. They look around. Egypt.
Oh, fuck.
So they start looking around. Suddenly his friend finds the scarab.
So his friend is Blue Beetle?
And his friend's turned into Blue Beetle.
Oh, that's a good pitch.
Right?
That's a good pitch. Well done, Richard.
That's,
Oh, shit.
I was very excited. I started putting those pieces together in my head and I got very excited. Hey there, residents. This episode of the Dr. DC podcast is brought to you thanks to our amazing sponsors, Great Lakes Grooming Co. They sent us some awesome products to try, so let's check them out. We have the Pine Tar Soap. This is amazing. We use it all the time at my house. It's a really wonderful sort of peppermint smell to it. It's a traditional recipe that they've developed themselves, and it's awesome. It's a great way to get clean and smell good every day. As well, I love the peppermint lip balm, especially this time of the year, living where we do, constantly getting sort of dry lips, and it's a huge pain. So definitely want to use that. Great Lakes Grooming is meant to be easy to use, rain or shine. All their products are purposely designed and environmentally responsible, handmade here in Canada, really ready for adventure wherever one may find themselves. For you lucky listeners, we also have an opportunity where you can get 10% off on Great Lakes Grooming regular priced products by going to www.greatlakesgrooming.com and using the promo code DRDCPodcast. That's right, www.greatlakesgrooming.com. Promo code is DRDCPodcast. Back to the show.
All right, next question.
So we're heading over to email.
Chicka to email.
Every week I hope it's from a female.
Yes.
Oh man, it's not from a female.
See, this is how we know that if they're fans of our podcast, or if they're people that we want to listen to our podcast.
Oh, the ugly one. You're looking very makey-outy tonight.
I'm the ugly one. All right. So the first question comes from Lonnie Holdoff.
All right.
Hey guys, second
Hey,
time.
Lonnie, hold off.
We made that joke.
Have we? Okay.
Well, her first thing she says, "Hey guys, second time questioner here."
Oh, sorry, Lonnie.
Yeah. Also, thanks for pointing that out. I don't always remember who asks questions or not. Nice to have you back. Unless this question sucks, then get out of here. So Lonnie asks, does Gotham Knight count as part of the Nolanverse? ? If so, do you feel that the existence of Killer Croc fits that universe?
So Gotham Knight was like a series of 6 like short, basically like anime style Batman movies. It was Kevin Conroy voicing Batman, but were they meant to? I seem to remember something about they were meant to have been part of the Nolanverse. Do you know if that's true or not, Matt?
Yes, they were. Like I remember, like that was like if anyone remembers, like that was back when like almost every like major like interesting media franchise was getting a compilation where they would like get a bunch of like legit Japanese animation studios to like do compilation films to kind of tie into it, like The Matrix was the first
the
one that did
Animatrix,
it.
yeah.
Oh God.
I mean,
yo, man, go back. I gotta say one thing though, like, go back and watch those, and like, the Animatrix is actually the best Matrix movie.
Really?
I will, like,
Better than the first one?
Yeah, I will defend that statement till the day I die.
Oh
like,
my God.
genuinely.
what I found interesting in this Gotham Knight one, so there are 6 different stories. One of them was one of those like multiple perspectives. Like people were like, no, he was like he was a robot. No, he was a bat. He was like a bat monster. What it's like kids talking about seeing the Batman.
Yeah.
There's one where he like Fox develops this like magnetic repulsor thing, so he's bulletproof. But then like the bullets ricochet and someone innocent gets hit. So Batman's like, I could be bulletproof, but I can't risk other people's lives. So that it's like an explanation why he doesn't just technology himself like Iron Man or whatever.
Yeah.
But there is one in there where Batman is in the sewers and he fights Killer Croc. So Matt, what's your perspective on that? Because that Killer Croc is like it's not just like a dude living in the sewers. It's Killer Croc. Does that fit? Does it stand out weirdly as part of the Nolanverse?
Well, it's one of those things that like if not the condition he has specifically, like there legitimately is like a condition that people actually have where they can grow like really scaly like skin.
Yeah.
So like that part maybe isn't the super unbelievable part of it. Like, I don't know, like maybe he was just like a super insanely buff dude who got like, I don't know, like a weird version of that disease that also caused some other, like, I don't know, man. Like,
yeah,
it's
but the impression I'm getting is that to you that it doesn't actually stand out too much like a sore thumb. Then
it's weird. I would definitely say that like it maybe is a bit of a contrast, but like I would also argue that like because Gotham Knight came out like after Begins and like before the rest of the verse had been established,
right? And
as we kind of already talked about in this podcast, like Begins also did still have like some of the weirdness and the mythology stuff in it before it got like super grounded,
right?
So if nothing else, I would say like at the time, I wouldn't have found it implausible for there to be like some Nolanverse version of Killer Croc.
Right.
Whereas like maybe after Dark Knight and Rises and stuff, like it's a little less plausible. But like I don't know. If anything else, I'm kind of just like that would have been really interesting. And also now that I'm thinking about it, I'm just like, God, I got to watch Gotham Knight again.
There's like a subtle nod to Croc in Dark Knight Rises, which the fact is that Bane's army is like living under Gotham, like in the sewers, and someone don't they say something like about the crocodile down there? So, like, is it like there's like a throwaway line or something in Dark Knight Rises?
Yeah, I think so.
It's like I don't know if it's meant to imply that there is also a Killer Croc, but it's just like you're meant to make the connection yourself.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to me, those Gotham Knight ones, I like most of the Killer Croc one did stand out to me. It bothered me because there's a Deadshot one. There's that like magnetic repulsor one. There's the one where there's the
one where he fights Scarecrow, which is like actually kind of fucking scary.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of really good ones in there, but the Killer Croc one did feel odd to me. I still would have loved to have like seen maybe some version of that live action. Like maybe you're right, just a buff dude with that medical condition who.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it would look too different from the one from Suicide Squad.
No.
That's not That's not a crazy version of Killer Croc. So, maybe it could have worked, but I do remember thinking it was odd at the time.
Yeah.
All right, let's head into the next question. We have something from Emily.
All right. Hi, Emily.
Love this question. If Heath Ledger hadn't died, what do you think The Dark Knight Rises would have been? I mean, in terms of plot, characters, setting, everything.
I had heard a thing where Nolan had a plan where it would be like the trial of the Joker.
Oh,
I don't know if that was substantiated or not, but I remember sort of like hearing about that. I always thought that would be kind of interesting to like flip it completely around where it's even like less actiony and it's like the mental game that he would be like almost like a runaway jury kind of thing. Like they need to make sure the Joker goes to prison or goes to Arkham or whatever. And he's like sort of out maneuvering them.
Yeah.
But Matt, what do you think?
I was originally used to think that like it might have been a team up movie. Like we would have potentially gotten like maybe like Bane still would have been brought in, but like part of his plan would have been like breaking into Arkham and releasing the Joker.
Right.
Like, because I know especially like I guess this might have been because of Heath Ledger's death, but like I remember the in-universe explanation for why they bring Blackgate into it is because like Arkham Asylum has been completely like stripped of people except the Joker,
right.
who's like sealed off in like the lowest possible segment of the asylum, and like literally no one else is there to like aside from like guards to keep track of him. And
that's
stuff.
in like the novelization or something, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And like I could see feasibly like maybe that would have been part of Bane's plan, and then like I don't know, like maybe like they could have even had a moment of like the Joker turning on him after Bane like breaks his back, because he could have been like, hey man, like that was my job sort of thing.
Right.
Like, you know, like you don't get to fuck up my main source of fun. Like that's for me to do.
Right.
Sort of thing. So it could have even been like just an ongoing fight between like, it might have just like straight up turned Gotham into a civil war, like even more so.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
You probably
like,
could have used a lot of the similar sort of story inspiration that Rises used anyway. And just instead of bringing back like the Ra's al Ghul and bringing Talia in and stuff like that, you could replace that valuable screen time with Joker. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I would have been into that. What about you, Richard? Do you have like any sort of thoughts where you would have wanted it to go if Heath Ledger didn't die?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I started having a thought, but then, I mean, you piqued my interest, Matt, when you mentioned the Civil War thing. I would love to see one. I want it all at Arkham.
Right.
I think that would be
your bottle episode.
Yeah, it would be so rad. And then have it be sort of an internal battle versus the Joker versus somebody like Jeremiah Arkham, where basically like he starts gathering villains and starts like experimenting on people, things like that, and starts getting his sort of own little like group of followers through that, through psychological manipulation. Yeah.
And hey, if there's even like physical experiments going on, maybe that's how we get Killer Croc.
Exactly. So something like that, right? So you start developing
or freeze.
Exactly, but because it's all of these very insular sort of like closed spaces, you're not getting these sort of like big action movie type things, and so you can have more characters without worrying about it being like too showy, and it still feels like Nolan. And then
unlike some other recent movies that I could talk about.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then obviously, and then the Joker starts gathering people, while at the same time, trying to be, he takes hostage,
right,
one of the employees who happens to be a woman.
Oh, Harlene,
yeah. And so you get that, and you don't get the payoff until the very end of the even what her name is,
right?
But slowly through a sort of like a Stockholm syndrome situation, you actually get Harley Quinn
right
at the
near
end.
the end of the movie, like a Mr. J,
yes,
kind of thing,
exactly. And so that you pull that out, but then you're getting sort of like Batman has to intervene, but like these villains are all fighting each other at the same time. He's trying to stop it all from happening.
Right. Yeah, that's I like that. That's interesting.
Prisoners take over the prison. Yeah. Always love that. Have you guys seen the TV show The Legion yet?
No,
I haven't.
Fuck. It's the first like these few episodes all happen within an insane asylum.
Right.
Really, really, really good.
Okay.
Yeah. Thinking about it like someone with like psychic powers inside of an insane asylum.
Yeah, totally.
It's awesome. Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, yeah, the whole time they're trying to convince him that he's insane and he actually just has powers.
Right. Oh, fine.
It's amazing. You definitely should watch it.
Yeah, totally.
All right. Let's head to the next question. This one comes from Aaron, who
You done messed up, AA Ron.
Fucking love it. God damn.
Get your ass down to Principal O'Shag's office.
Every time I see Aaron as a name, I think that's really funny. And the one time I don't say anything about it. So he says, what do you think of the theory that there were hidden villains in the Nolan movies, like how Coleman Reese was Riddler and that mercenary sniper with Bane was Deadshot?
Matt,
they're true.
Matt, the Coleman Reese one is that he's the guy.
Give me the Coleman notes.
For those who don't remember, he's a guy that works for Wayne Enterprises. In The Dark Knight, he is running the diligence because there's this whole like subplot of like maybe like working with this Chinese company, and he does the diligence and he sees that there's like this massive amount of money going to like Wayne R&D where it shouldn't be, and he discovers that Bruce Wayne is Batman.
Yeah,
and he's basically like very lightly threatened by Morgan Freeman and then shuts up about it. But basically, it's implied that he's very smart and he deduces the identity of the Batman. His name is Coleman Reese, Mr. Reese, Mysteries, and people were like, oh, the Riddler.
Oh, I'm dumb. Yeah, me either.
Yeah. So that's like the theory there. Did you come out of that movie like at all? I know his name's not Edward Nygma, but were you like I wonder if he's like the Riddler? Did you think that? Did you ever feel that?
I didn't personally because like I don't know. I just always saw the Nolan movies as like very insular in the sense that like they really did just deal with kind of like the villain of the week sort of thing, and like I don't even know if Nolan was necessarily like interested in hinting at anything more aside from like, you know, the end of Begins where Gordon shows him the Joker card because like obviously you have to bring that in.
Of course.
But like I don't know. I find that that's a thing that especially people have gone back on and looked at it like especially with I'd argue with Rises, like that was kind of when, if I'm getting my timeline and dates right, I think Rises was around the time that we were starting to get the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like,
actually,
2008 wasn't it? Was the Iron Man.
Dark Knight was 2008, and Iron Man came out in 2008.
Yeah,
right. So
by the time Rises came out, that's actually the year we got Avengers, I think.
No, I think Rises predates Avengers.
Oh, does
a little
it?
bit.
Okay,
yeah.
But at any rate, yeah.
But I think like that was a thing then, like especially in the lead up to Rises and also the release of it is like now I think the Marvel movies were already trying to like instill this thing within people to like look out for those references to other characters because like in the case of the Marvel movies, it actually was significant and did mean something.
Yeah. I mean, in Rises, in this example that was given in the question, I don't even know that this guy has lines, but there's the guy who's like clearly like a sniper kind of mercenary. He's beside Bane for most of the movie, and people were just like, oh, he's got like a sniper rifle, maybe he's Deadshot. Like,
yeah.
that's even weaker a thing than the Coleman Reese Riddler thing was. But yeah, to me, that one didn't ever feel like an actual thing. That throwaway Killer Croc line meant more to me than that guy next to Bane.
Yeah, honestly, even just rewatching the movies recently, like I didn't notice the guy with the sniper rifle at all.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I mean, because he literally doesn't say anything. He's basically like a non-entity in that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of like the idea that maybe he was the Riddler, but this is the Nolan thing where he either did it by accident, where he was like, "Oh, Mr. Reese, fuck," like, or he did do it, but it's like way too subtle, which is a Nolan thing, because there's a backstory to Bane's mask too, that it's pumping him like a painkiller. So he's not super strong, but he can't feel pain, and that's why he kind of like punches through that column and stuff, because he can't stop himself. But that's not in the movie. It's a thing that Nolan made it part of the character. It informed how Tom Hardy played him. It's part of like the art direction and everything, but it's not said in the movie. That's too subtle. That's bad filmmaking. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's and that bugs me.
There's a difference between. Like, good.
Well, I was just going to say, so it's entirely possible that he meant for Coleman Reese to be the Riddler, and he just played those cards too close to the vest, right? Like,
yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, is that like that's stuff like that is where like you made the bad filmmaking comment, and like I agree in the sense that like there are sometimes things that people like to argue are ambiguous, but I'm like, there's a difference between like a movie withholding answers to a question from you and like a movie just flat out not having the answers to its own questions.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, I think that's definitely how I feel about these types of things when people are like, I think this person was so and so. Certainly in the Nolan movies, it definitely feels like it just wasn't given the time, as opposed to being like a deliberate little wink.
Yeah, like to me, I've always kind of argued, like this is kind of a go-to example of mine that I actually used to give in like classes that I've taught and stuff like that. But like a good one for me is like if you go back and watch the movie Prometheus, which I'm not sure if you guys have had the pleasure.
Well, I've seen it once. I don't know that I'd go back.
Oh yeah, I don't know how you can barely even see it once.
Yeah, like it's one of those ones that like I have had people like vehemently, angrily argue to me that like it really is genius and self-contained, and just people are too stupid to get the subtlety. And like I've seen it more than once, often against my will, and I just look at it and I'm like, and I'm just like, no. Like this is a movie that does not have the answers to its own questions.
Have you played the Alien video game yet?
Oh, which one?
The newer one. I can't remember.
Isolation.
Yeah,
that one was awesome.
That does a good job. Fuck, goddamn, I love that movie. Yeah,
it's one of those things that like, and I think. Like a lot of filmmakers, like I'd even potentially lump Christopher Nolan in that, is that like I think some filmmakers and writers are a lot more invested in the questions than in the actual answers.
Yeah.
Which is honestly like kind of a good thing at times. Like if we bring up Inception, again, and like I like how that movie ends.
Oh, like that particular moment. Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like I like that it's ambiguous and it kind of left it up to the audience and all that sort of stuff. And like to me, that's how you do it well. But like I would argue, like especially lately, like Ridley Scott is another one of those filmmakers who like really seems far more invested in like what does this actually like? Maybe this means this, maybe this means that. I don't know, but like it was things like it's things like that make me go like I'm really glad he didn't direct the most recent Blade Runner. But
yeah, seriously, yeah.
Huh. Interesting. I think we answered that question.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's head over to Reddit where everything's nice and no one's ever mean. So the first one comes from Hamza_Aman96.
The first comment is kill yourself.
Yeah. Well, no, that's just implied when I said Reddit. So the first one is question about The Dark Knight. at the end of the movie, why doesn't Batman reveal his identity to Harvey? As wouldn't that help him change his mind?
Oh, so during that standoff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about that? Do you feel like that? I mean, there are movies where superhero and TV shows where heroes are giving away their secret identities for way less. For like
Green Arrow, Flash.
the Flash, yeah. For like a slice of pizza. Like, I'm Barry Allen.
It's like, hey, how you doing? I'm Barry Allen. I just take your order. Like,
But do you think that let's put aside the narrative thing or like what it would be as a film, but do you think within that continuity that would have been enough to bring Harvey back?
Well, I mean, I feel like it almost does a disservice to the character of Two-Face that he is salvageable. Like, and I mean, I know it's happened in the comics. Like, I know he's come back from it.
Only ever sort of
points.
temporarily, though. But yeah,
exactly. And it's like, I don't know. I feel like if anything, if they'd done that, that would have been a point where, like, maybe he would have started to reconsider, or something like that. But I don't know. I really definitely felt like at that point in the movie, like he's gone.
Now that's with information that we have. Let's reframe the question again. Do you think it's weird that Batman didn't try that? Batman didn't try to like redeem him or bring him back via like, no, like, I'm in it too. Like, you're not the only one who's lost. You know what I mean? Like, is it weird that Batman didn't even attempt it?
But I mean, was his psyche split already at that point?
Possibly, but again, does Batman know that?
No,
that's the inherent question. Is that like it's not so much what it is with Two-Face. It's like, is it surprising that Batman didn't try? Like.
It's not something that I ever thought of when I watched the movie. Like, I didn't think of that as a flaw, but like, I think the question brings up an interesting point.
It's interesting, and like, I think it's easy to hand wave that off potentially as like Batman has had a long fucking day. Like at that point in the movie, I don't know, like. At a moment like that, it's kind of like, did he maybe do the 100% most rational thing? I don't know, but like, would you?
Yeah, fair enough.
But aside from that, like, I don't know. There's this interesting dynamic I find there because, like, I mean, the argument you could make is that like it's not just like Harvey he's talking to; it's also Gordon and his kid. And
yes, yeah.
And like, I'm sure somewhere in the back of Batman's brain, he's kind of like, the more people know who I am, like the more at risk, like they potentially are for like,
right. That old chestnut. Like,
yeah. So, and that's the kind of thing. But then it's also like, I once like listened to another podcast that was talking about Rises, and they were talking specifically about that moment where like Gordon clues in that he's Batman after like the comment about like him as a kid.
Yeah, the super like not cumbersome sentence he says.
Oh yeah, and it's also like it's the fact that like someone highlighted the fact that like that line is bullshit in The Dark Knight Rises because like of course Gordon already knows who Batman is.
Right.
Like that's just such a thing in so much of the universe at this point that it's like, you know, most of the time it's not outwardly said, but like fucking of course Gordon knows who he is.
Yeah.
Like that's even a thing, and like that's where I wanted to bring up that animated series moment that you mentioned earlier, was that like the part where Barbara's like imagining all this stuff. Like literally what happens in that episode is she goes in the room and is like about to tell her dad that she's Batgirl. And like he kind of just looks up and he's like, Babs, listen, like I just want you to know, whatever you're doing in your life, I'm proud of you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like just kind of that moment of like, I know what you're going to say. You don't
say it. Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, I'm the police commissioner. I'm not a fucking idiot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So like I don't know. I feel like that's almost maybe a point in this question's favor where like. Maybe it would have made more sense for Batman to try to do that because it's like, come on, Gordon already knows who he is.
Yeah, fair enough. Interesting.
All right, let's go to the last question then.
Last question. All right,
this is actually a question.
Wow.
This is a question from me.
Okay.
So it's been in the news a little bit lately. Kevin Smith was talking about having Christopher Nolan's Batman in the DCEU and what that would have been like, and would those movies have been better had he been in them? I'd love to pose that question to you guys. One, does he fit in that universe? would that have changed, do you think, the outcome of those movies?
Right.
And do you think that those movies would have been better in the future, would have been better for the DCEU had it been more like Christopher Nolan's vision?
I do think a little bit that maybe they weren't sure whether or not they wanted to use Christian Bale's Batman again. And Man of Steel, that movie is a first contact movie. Like it's a world that is normal, and then fucking aliens come out of the sky and demand to know where Kal-El is, right? It's a first contact movie. I think maybe it was deliberate because they weren't sure whether or not they wanted to keep Christian Bale's Batman around.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's if he has a bit of a life cycle as Batman, it kind of throws the timeline off just because there's 8 years in there between Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises. But, you have Batman has a life cycle and then aliens show up. That's a reasonable time for him to like get off his ass in Italy and become Batman again.
It's true.
Like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I got to stop fighting these like criminals who are like robbing banks and stuff. But like aliens, I mean, I could do something about that.
Yeah. I think those two could work together. It falls apart for me when you start introducing like the Amazonians, the gods,
the Flash,
the Speed
Aquaman,
Force, shit like that. But yeah, Matt, what do you think?
I'm very much of the same mind as you, and it's like it's the kind of thing that like I'm sure that's definitely a thing the studio is wondering as well, just like exactly like you said, because like it's just at that point, even if for no other reason, like like those movies made so much goddamn money.
Yes, yeah.
It's really astonishing, especially for when they came out, just how much money those movies made.
Yeah.
And it's the kind of thing too that like if anyone who knows Hollywood knows that like the best thing they think to do with a formula is just milk it until it's dead.
Well, yeah, of course, right?
It's my mentality for myself, actually.
Like,
at least wait for me to leave first.
No, I need you here, actually.
Oh man,
You're part of this process.
Answer another question.
One more, just one more.
Like, should I leave you two alone?
No, we can do it while you're here.
I'll just button this joke by saying the word Deathstroke.
Yeah.
The Terminator.
The Sperminator.
Oh, gee. I'm sure Brazzers is way ahead of us on this one.
They have to be. Yeah.
Years behind.
So
we're behind the curve. But yeah, anyway, all I was trying to get toward
in non-Brazzers film.
Like, there is such a thing?
The Dark Knight.
Oh.
Oh no! You and I have played this game before. It never goes well.
But do you think there's there would have been a space if they did decide to use Christian Bale's Batman, Christopher Nolan's sort of universe? Do you think that there beyond aliens would be a reasonable space to throw in those even weirder cosmic things like Speed Force, like the emotional spectrum? Like
I kind of liked what you said about the fact that like of all of it coming after the conclusion of Rises, like in the sense that it's kind of like, we've had the small gritty universe and now it's just going to get bigger.
Yeah.
Like I don't necessarily think that's a bad idea like at all, but like I think from a pure like even if nothing else from a marketing and audience perspective and stuff like that, I feel like it would have just come across as stupid. Like,
right.
Like even like
execution would have failed maybe.
That's kind of what I'm thinking, because it's like I think even if they did a really good job of it, I think like a large portion of the audience just wouldn't have bought it like at all.
Right.
It's one of those things that's like that is a factor they have to take into consideration. So it's like I don't know. It's one of those things that, like, maybe there was, from a storytelling perspective, room for that Batman to come back.
Right.
But, like, from a sheer, like, filmmaking perspective, like, I don't know. I'd probably say no.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right. Well, those are some awesome questions.
Those were great questions.
Thank you so much, Matt, for being here. Those were, you actually, it's so funny when you add, like, intelligence, knowledge of comic books, and positivity to this podcast, it actually gets better.
Yeah, Colin will be back next week.
Yeah, don't worry. You don't like the turn of these events. But yeah, so if people want to talk more about you, about films or the Nolanverse or things that they have on their mind, can people find you online anywhere?
So I'm very likely going to be fairly soon. I'm trying so the big thing about this is that I'm currently potentially applying for my PhD.
Oh damn, Dr. Matt.
So
Dr. Chicken.
Yeah, pretty.
There's only one doctor here.
There can only be one.
The Doctors DC podcast doesn't sound as good.
No.
But if anyone wants to see some of my work, potentially, I do have my graduate thesis on the films of Mamoru Oshii is available through the Carleton University Library. If they just want to talk about, if they want to read about me talking about, transhumanism and,
We've got some pretty big dorks. I'm sure somebody was going to want to.
Transhumanism, that's where that cyborg thing came from. There we go.
Yeah. Man, I can't escape it. But, other than that, I don't have a super huge online presence yet, but, in advance of my applications, I'm probably going to do my hand in a lot more publishing, or at least try to.
Oh, rad.
So... at some point or another, if you guys want, if I get anything up there for people to peruse, I'll send it along to you guys.
Absolutely, we'll be happy to share it on our social media.
Yeah.
If nothing else, I'll send you the link to my thesis if people want to check that out.
Yeah, we can definitely share that.
Sweet.
I'm going to post
that it's good.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say I'm going to post some of your the reviews that you did for my Modern Mythologies blog a few years ago.
Oh yeah.
Because those are some great talks about some not necessarily great films. You did one on Constantine, which the two of us really like. But it's sort of widely reviled. But I'll post those old reviews so people can get a bit of a sense of your taste for comics, your taste for film, and sort of the way you think about those things.
Oh, that sounds great. And wow, man, way to just instantly kill any goodwill I've amassed through this podcast.
This guy fucking loves Keanu as Constantine.
Oh my god, man, I'm just gonna go ahead and say, I know, we're wrapping up and it's not at all on topic, but Constantine has possibly the best movie Satan of all time.
Peter Stormare, barefoot, tar on his feet, white suit, yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Too good. But no, I was going to comment that, when we were talking about, some of the more, questionable entries in DC, I was like, yes, I distinctly remember the fact that the first movie you asked me to review was Green Lantern.
Well, it was two. It was Green Lantern and then Green Lantern First Flight, the animated one, because they're both origin movies, and the animated one is way better than the big budget blockbuster one.
Yeah, just I remember rewatching Green Lantern for that article and just being like, I hate you so much.
That sounds pretty much like when I give assignments. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, with much disdain.
Yeah, pretty much.
So if you want to talk to Matt online or send us some information about why you think that Tim Curry is obviously the best devil in Legend, you could do
good.
Yeah, right.
Good assertion. I can't even argue.
You can do so through our many social media formats such as Facebook,
Dr. DC Podcast,
Instagram,
Dr. DC Podcast,
email,
drdcpodcast@gmail.com,
our website,
drdcpodcast.com or .ca,
Twitter.
At Dr. DC.
You thought I was going to forget that one.
I did.
Yeah,
I 100%
right.
thought you were going to forget
make sure you go to iTunes, leave us a 5-star review. We've been getting lots of reviews. Actually, I've saved one for next week because it involves Colin. So
sure,
that's the most I'll say. But it's very, very good. But yeah, make sure you go to there, give us a 5-star review, say something fun, and we'll say it on the podcast. It helps us out a lot.
Yeah, totally.
Also, big announcement. If you go to our website, we've got merch up. We finally got merch, and it's not going down. This is permanent merch. And I've actually made some new last-minute updates that the doctor hasn't seen yet.
Oh, fuck.
So we've got an iPhone case, which you've seen. The towels, and now you can sit on our faces. We've got
so fucking classy.
We've got a mug, so you can put it up to your mug. It's got our mugs on it.
Our mugs on a mug.
Yeah. We've got obviously the classic Dr. DC face shirt as well as the women's style now.
Oh.
And now 3 new reveals. We've got.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
We've got Zombie Colin. as a shirt. We've got an Edit Point shirt from the Doctor, and we have a Because Speed Force shirt.
I love the Because Speed Force one. I love the Edit Point shirt, but I just have to mention the Zombie Colin shirt has him going, Morrison.
So for some of our
awesome.
true fans, yeah, you can get some of those shirts, and no one will know what you're talking about.
I am definitely going to need one of those Because Speed Force.
I figured that one. It's got our logo on the back of it too. The only one that's got something on the back.
That's incredible.
Beautiful.
Well, yeah, definitely check out our merch then. Yeah,
absolutely. So, I think that's all for today. So, some kind of sign off.
Thanks once again, Matt.
Oh, thank you guys for having me. This is great.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot.
Adios.
Woo!
They always fight for what is right. Live with danger and adventure.